Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something truly monumental.
hmm
We're doing a deep dive into the theological and the practical secrets of financial prosperity.
Right. And the sources we're using, they're focused on a very specific concept they call kingdom prosperity.
Exactly. This isn't your standard business advice, not at all.
No, this goes way beyond that. We've got excerpts here that are talking about a type of wealth that is, eternal, secure, and deeply purposeful.
And the material is pretty insistent, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It argues that true financial prosperity, the kind that can, say, withstand a global crisis, is only unlocked by applying these very specific spiritual secrets.
Moving beyond just luck or who you know.
Or even just theory. It's about getting away from all that.
And what I love about this is that the mission is really laid out for us. We're here to extract the core blueprint.
The step-by-step path.
Yes, a path that the authors claim moves success from being this, external thing you chase to an internal alignment.
A covenant you actively practice. That word is key. Practice.
We're looking for what the source calls the light that separates those who thrive from those who just get by.
And that's a great place to start, because the whole thing kicks off with a really radical premise.
Which is
that stagnation, lack, financial frustration.
these aren't random. They're not just bad luck.
They always have a reason.
Always. The authors argue that mighty works, and that includes immense wealth, they only answer to what the text calls this wisdom.
So it's not about fortune.
It's about light. It's
Yeah.
about understanding God's hidden strategies and then, actually applying them.
Okay, so let's lay out the three big foundational claims that really structure this entire dive. First up, this idea that prosperity isn't something God just, puts up with.
Far from it. The source presents it as his genuine pleasure.
His pleasure, that's a strong word.
It is. The source really hammers this home. It uses 3 John 2, which says God wishes above all things that you may prosper and be in health. But there's a catch, right? It's not just about getting rich for the sake of it.
Exactly. This isn't a divine wish for you to retire early and, live on a beach somewhere. God's ultimate goal, according to the source, is to make you a blessing.
You're meant to be a distributor.
A distributor, not just a container. The idea is that the kingdom needs ministers to the needy, not more needy people.
And that flows right into the second big claim. The source of all this change is found in specific revelation or light.
If prosperity isn't luck, then what is it?
It's finding and acting on God's secrets.
Primarily through his word, yeah. The authors point to Job, who talked about his youth, saying his prosperity was guaranteed when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle.
So these secrets are the real foundation.
They're everything. The source quotes Isaiah 60. Arise, shine, for thy light is come. The implication there is so simple but so profound.
Which is?
Until your light comes, your personal revelation of these principles, you can work yourself into the ground and still not shine. Understanding has to come before manifestation.
And the third theme gives this a massive, almost global scale. They call it the end time mandate.
Right. This isn't just about your personal bank account. It's about funding something huge.
Generational funding.
Precisely. The material states that the end-time church is specifically programmed to prosper exceedingly.
Programmed, like it's built into the design.
Exactly. And the reason is totally explicit. To fund the preaching of the gospel in all nations. To fulfill Matthew 24.13.
Wow.
It's reinforced by Zechariah. My cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad. So the level of global evangelism required for the end times, it demands a flow of resources the world has literally never seen before.
And the source argues that we, the people of the covenant, are meant to be that prosperous generation.
To meet that massive financial need, yes.
That sets an incredibly grand scope and a profound motivation. So let's just jump right into the bedrock of this whole system. Part 1, the foundational principles of covenant and purity. So this is where the source just draws the clearest line in the sand. Prosperity, it says, is not something you pray for. It's a covenant you practice. And that's a fundamentally different approach.
It changes the entire dynamic, doesn't it? It shifts you from petition to participation.
From making to doing.
Deuteronomy 8.18 is the cornerstone here. It says God gives the power to get wealth.
But for a specific reason.
Specifically to establish his covenant. So we're not begging for wealth. We're engaging in a, for all intents and purposes, a legal spiritual contract to enforce God's established agreement here on earth.
You don't cry into a covenant. I love that line from the source.
You enter or sign in for it through obedience. The source points to 2 Chronicles where the people entered into a covenant and there was joy. It was a conscious decision.
I think that's a really important point to just sit with for a moment, because when you're facing financial stress, the first instinct is to fast and pray harder.
Of course.
But this material suggests that if you're already in the covenant, you should maybe shift your energy from crying to the covenant to walking in the covenant.
That's it. You move from emotional distress to legal discipline. And once you do that, the guarantee is what stunned me most in these sources.
The covenant is eternal.
It's secured forever. It's likened to the covenant of day and night.
Let's unpack that, because that is a level of certainty that you just do not find in any secular business strategy. Pure as the fact that day follows night. What does that mean in practical everyday terms?
It means you can stake your entire financial future on it with the same absolute certainty that you stake your plans on the sun rising tomorrow.
You just expect it.
You expect it. If you wake up, you expect the day to begin. If you're practicing the covenant, you must expect the provision to arrive. The source is blunt. If day and night remain, the covenant remains intact.
Which eliminates your reliance on all the things we usually worry about.
All of it. Interest rates, market trends, political stability, all of it becomes secondary to the covenant.
And this eternal guarantee is what allows the covenant to, as the source says, prevail over any external climate, specifically famine.
Yes, and the historical examples here are they're meant to be shock value, I think.
Let's start with Abraham.
Okay, so look at Abraham. Genesis 12, he's doing well, but then a grievous famine hits the land. He goes down to Egypt.
The typical story would be he loses a lot during the famine.
But that's not what happens. Genesis 13 records that Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. He went into a famine and came out richer.
That's fascinating. So the famine didn't stop the blessing.
It just relocated him. He was tested by the climate, and the covenant covering held firm. But then you get to Isaac, and his story is even more of a radical paradox.
Okay, what did he do?
Isaac is in the middle of a severe famine. But instead of fleeing to Egypt like his dad did,
He stays.
he stays, and he sows his seed in that same land during the famine.
Which is insane from a human perspective.
Completely insane. And he receives 100-fold harvest in the same year. This is presented as just undeniable proof that the covenant overrides economic laws.
The 100-fold return. It wasn't some magic number.
No, it was the mechanism of the covenant protecting and supernaturally accelerating his labor. It made him so great the Philistines actually envied him.
He was profiting from his work while everyone else was literally dying of hunger.
And then there's Jacob. Even during a sore famine, he didn't just have enough, he had a surplus.
Right, he was able to send presents and double money to Egypt.
He was operating from a position of reserve and resource, not desperation. The pattern is clear.
But the ultimate illustration of this whole principle, the one that really drove it home for me, was the paradox in Egypt during Joseph's time.
Oh, this is where the source really separates those covered by covenant and those just relying on human wisdom.
So what happened?
Well, Genesis 47 records this massive national crisis. Money had failed. The economy collapsed. And the Egyptians were literally selling themselves and their land for food to Pharaoh.
They were the most advanced society on earth.
The smartest, the richest. They relied on their wisdom and their wealth, and it failed them completely. But at the same time,
the Israelites, the covenant people,
they're dwelling in Goshen, they have possessions, they're multiplying exceedingly.
That contrast is just. It's profound. The most advanced society is reduced to slavery.
While the shepherds, the covenanted people, are thriving and operating completely outside of the climate's constraints. The covenant prevailed while the human economy utterly failed.
That is the core insight of this entire section. The covenant is your covering.
Exactly. But, and this is a huge but, before you can access those immense guarantees, the source insists on a prerequisite.
Okay, what is it?
Consecration. This is the spiritual foundation, and the argument is surprisingly blunt about it.
How blunt?
It says, in no uncertain terms, sin is the mother of poverty.
Wow. Okay, that is a startlingly direct statement. So how does the material make that connection? How does it trace that direct line?
It goes right back to the beginning, to the Garden of Eden. When Adam sinned, what were the immediate consequences?
He was only 8.
Immediate nakedness, which is a loss of dignity, loss of honor, and he was sent from the plenty of Eden
into the wilderness.
And to lack and struggle. Sin literally stripped him of his covering and his provision. So the source argues the ultimate inherent consequence of iniquity is penury. Sin sent humanity out of God's provision and into financial struggle.
So, if I'm hearing this right, the source is concluding that iniquity is the cheapest, most effective way to block your own prosperity.
That's it. If you want to solve the scarcity problem in your life, you have to solve the sin problem first.
Okay.
Job 22 makes this link explicit. It says, until you return to the Almighty and put away iniquity, abundance is just not in view. Unrighteousness creates a literal blockade between you and the flow of heaven's wealth.
And the source uses the description of heaven itself as the ultimate proof point for this.
Yes, heaven is the holiest place, right?
Right.
And it's also described as the wealthiest place paved with gold. The source uses this to basically shatter that old religious idea that poverty somehow equals piety.
If the holiest place is the wealthiest place,
Then poverty cannot possibly be a proof of purity. The material argues the opposite, that poverty is actually a proof of unrighteousness, or at least of operating outside the covenant's integrity demands.
so purity begets plenty.
Iniquity begets penury. It's that simple.
But the sources must have a caveat about wealthy people who lack this foundation, right? I mean, this isn't a blanket rule that all rich people are righteous.
Absolutely not, and that's a critical point. Proverbs 1 says, the prosperity of fools shall destroy them.
And a fool in this context is what?
Someone who mocks sin or just disregards these covenant foundations. So God, in his wisdom, might actually withhold lasting prosperity from that person.
As a protection.
Exactly. So that their wealth doesn't become the very mechanism for their own self-destruction. It keeps it from turning into an instrument of arrogance and their eventual downfall.
So true, secure, sorrow-free prosperity is only for the righteous who fear God.
That's the argument. And this integrity has to extend practically to how you deal with money, which the material describes as a spiritual battleground.
It's warfare.
It is. The Bible says to fight the good fight of faith. And the source links that directly to wrestling against the love of money and the temptation of financial corruption.
So you have to be intentional.
The source is adamant. You must fight financial corruption and compromise, or you risk losing your soul over money.
And this commitment to righteousness, it even affects your giving. It's not just what you give.
It's how you got it and where your heart is. Malachi 3 says, God sits as a refiner and purifier, precisely so that his people can offer offerings in righteousness.
If the foundation is dirty,
The offering itself is not pleasant or accepted. Only when you've departed from evil and dealt with the sin question do you access the guaranteed, unshakable prosperity promised in the covenant. Consecration secures the foundation before you can build anything else on it.
okay, so once that foundation of purity consecration is laid, the journey seems to shift inward. This next part is all about aligning the heart. It demands dedication, affection, and interact. And this is a controversial word, addiction.
Yeah, that one definitely stands out. But let's start with dedication.
Right.
Dedication is the step that takes a consecrated person, someone who is already heaven-bound, and ensures they also achieves distinction and influence here on earth.
And the key is the heart.
It's the priority of the heart. The source material is just unequivocal on this. God demands the heart first. My son, give me thine heart.
So if the heart isn't surrendered,
The external stuff, the cash, the tithes, the offerings, they're basically wasted efforts. The example of the Macedonian church is so powerful here.
what did they do?
They achieved this legendary level of generosity and prosperity because they first gave their own selves to the Lord. The self, the heart, has to be surrendered before the resources can follow meaningfully.
The source defines dedication as being planted.
Yes, from Psalm 92. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish.
And a planted tree is what? Committed? Unmoving?
Exactly. It doesn't check if the soil is better 2 blocks down the road. It's
Yeah.
just there. This unmoving, deadly commitment is what guarantees flourishing and distinction, no matter what your professional field is.
And this leads into that concept of the seed principle, that true greatness requires a total self-surrender.
To bring forth much fruit, the seed has to die. That's language from John 12. And that dying is the dedication, the total surrender of your personal will and ambition to the purpose of the covenant.
Your old self has to die for this new, flourishing life to emerge.
Precisely. The source uses this analogy of a yam seedling. It looks pathetic, and it has to basically rot on the ground before it can produce this huge, valuable tuber.
So let me see if I have this distinction right. Consecration, the purity part, that keeps me out of spiritual trouble and secures my place in eternity.
Correct.
But dedication, this full surrender of the self, that's the mechanism behind my distinction and my success on earth.
You've got it. A consecrated person won't go to hell, but a dedicated person won't lose color on the earth. Daniel is the perfect example.
How so?
His high performance, his promotions, they were directly tied to his unwavering, dedicated commitment to the law of his God. It made him exceptional, and it made him impossible to trap.
Which leads us to the internal motivator for all of this, affection.
Right, which is defined as delightsome commitment. It's the joy that fuels the engine of dedication.
And the source has a pretty stark warning about serving without that joy.
It does. It says that serving the Lord without joy results in terrible lack. The motivation matters more than the magnitude of the service.
If you're serving out of, say, grudging obligation.
You risk having to serve your enemies in hunger and thirst and want. That's from Deuteronomy. Affection transforms service from a burden into a privilege.
And the ultimate example of this is Solomon.
Absolutely. His love for God was the explicit motivation for his giving. It wasn't a calculated business transaction.
He loved the Lord.
And that love drove him to offer 1,000 burnt offerings. His extravagant giving was just an expression of his affection.
This is so key because the source warns against giving that's motivated by, lusts or just a sense of duty.
It says that kind of giving cancels out the giving. Philanthropy, giving out of social pressure.
Yeah.
That doesn't access covenant multiplication. Only giving driven by genuine affection does.
And the intensity of that affection is directly proportional to the results.
Right. John 14 says that those who keep his commandments out of love are loved by the Father and will be manifested too. Lasting, sorrow-free prosperity is tied to carrying divine presence, and in God's presence there are pleasures forevermore.
The word delight keeps coming up.
Yes, it characterizes the blessed man in Psalm 1, the righteous man in Psalm 112. It's all about this affectionate, joyful commitment.
The source also gets really practical on this. It says love has to be a conscious choice.
Not just a fleeting emotion. The analogy is choosing a spouse and committing to that choice through good times and bad.
What's the point of that?
It ensures you don't become what the source calls a bread-and-butter Christian. Only seeking God for what you can get, or only when things are easy.
When you choose God as your ultimate center, out of affection,
The Father's love for you naturally draws heaven's best to you. It makes you a star on the earth.
Okay, so now we have to talk about the most challenging word in this section.
Addiction.
Addiction. It's used in the context of singular focus, total devotion to kingdom advancement. I mean, why such a strong, potentially negative word?
I think it's used deliberately to shock you into understanding the intensity and the priority required here. This isn't a casual suggestion.
It's a total
The
devotion.
one that supersedes all other concerns. The whole modern concept of a balanced life is kind of thrown out the window here. It's replaced by one central overriding focus, the kingdom.
And this singular focus is the formula for all the other additions.
Matthew 6.33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. So this addiction is simply defining your number one priority in the most intense language possible.
And the source says, those who prosper are the ones who are moved by every kingdom issue.
They love the peace of Jerusalem. It requires what the source calls a literal relocation of the heart. If your heart is located in building your own little empire first, you just can't access true abundance.
You have to change your position to change your situation.
That's it. And the examples of these God addicts are legendary, starting with David.
What was his addiction?
He was consumed with passion for the Lord's infrastructure. He literally said, I will not give sleep to mine eyes until I find out a place for the Lord.
That's intense.
This tireless, addicted pursuit of kingdom good is what ensures that good things, the blessings, will follow you. His heart was so totally focused on the divine project that his own personal needs were just overshadowed and met automatically.
And then you have the really intense example of Abraham on Mount Moriah.
Yeah, this one proves the depth of this God control. When he was commanded to offer Isaac, he rose up early in the morning and acted immediately.
Without hesitation.
The key insight from the source is that the sacrifice was already concluded in Abraham's heart, without tears. His dedication was so intense that the command was instantly obeyed. It showed he was absolutely controlled by God.
Like an addict is controlled by their drug.
That's the parallel the source draws. And that single-minded focus is what led to Jehovah-Jireh and God swearing this eternal, immense blessing to him.
That level of instant obedience is presented as the hallmark of true kingdom addiction.
And it leads to the ultimate promotion. You see it with Daniel and the Hebrew boys. Daniel's addiction to his faith secured him against all the plots of his enemies and led to him prospering through multiple regimes.
And the fiery furnace?
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's defiance. That was the language of people who were drunk with God. and it led directly to their supernatural promotion.
So the conclusion is powerful.
Kingdom addiction is the guaranteed highway to supernatural additions.
Okay, so we've established the foundation, which is purity, and the motive, which is heart alignment. Now we get into the mechanics.
The practical daily laws that govern how all this works.
And, crucially, the purpose for which we receive it in the first place.
Right. Let's start with the gateway.
The Word and faith.
The Word of God, the Bible, is established as the primary gateway to all wealth. The source argues that prosperity operates only on the platform of encounters with this book.
Wisdom, which is the correct application of what's revealed, is what actually leads to wealth.
It connects right back to that initial theme we talked about, that prosperity is light, not luck.
If you can only shine when your light comes, where does that light enter?
Psalm 119, the entrance of thy words giveth light. The Word provides the necessary blueprint, the strategy, the timing, the mental architecture you need to process wealth correctly. Without that light, all your effort is just blind labor.
So the Word provides the platform, but you still need faith to access the promise on that platform.
Correct. Faith is the covenant access. The word preached doesn't profit if it's not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. That's from Hebrews.
Faith is the trigger.
It's the trigger that commands performance from heaven. Without faith, the word just remains information. With faith, it becomes a creative force.
And this is not a passive faith.
No, this is the critical distinction. It's an active living force that demands a corresponding action.
It's not just taking notes in church.
Or just agreeing intellectually. It demands movement. Abraham didn't just believe he would sacrifice Isaac. He rose up early in the morning and acted. God weighs our actions to prove the authenticity of our faith.
The sources have a pretty remarkable anecdote to illustrate this action-based faith.
Yeah, the one about the miscarriage situation.
Tell us about that.
The individual, instead of just praying furiously, acted on the word. They just said, that cannot happen. Can I have my food, please?
So the action was just eating.
The simple, life-sustaining action of eating, in direct defiance of the negative circumstance, that was the definitive act of faith that triggered the change. Your faith has to be visible in your behavior. If you say you believe the word of financial prosperity, your spending, saving, and working habits have to prove it.
Which moves us to the most mechanical daily law of all.
Input and increase. The seed law.
The source is firm on this. Prosperity is impossible without seed.
The covenant hinges entirely on the law of seed time and harvest. It's an unbreakable principle from Genesis. If you break the law of seed, you break the law of increase. This law is what releases that power to get wealth we talked about.
But there's a really crucial clarification here. What is the primary seed? Because I think most people immediately jump to money.
And that assumption is precisely where many people fail, according to the source. It states emphatically that while money is a seed, the primary generating seed is the Word of God.
The Word is the blueprint.
It's a blueprint that, when it's sown and acted upon, produces the financial resources.
And Abram is the example again. He didn't start with a huge bank account.
He started with a specific instruction from God the Word, which was, get thee out of thy country.
He obeyed the Word. He acted on it.
And the wealth followed immediately. The action demanded by the Word, not money itself, was the platform for his sudden wealth. The Word guides you to the right place at the right time to use your physical resources.
This also leads to that practical distinction between seed and bread.
Which is a common point of confusion. Isaiah tells us God provides seed to the sower and then bread to the eater.
You're not supposed to eat your seed.
You can't. You can't eat all the bread and then wonder why you have no harvest next year. Until you grasp that, stagnation persists. Wise covenant practice requires setting aside a significant portion, the seed for replanting, even when your current bread supply seems enormous.
So now we shift from the mechanism of getting wealth to the absolute necessity of understanding why God intends for us to have it.
This section is so critical because it introduces the accountability that's built into the covenant. If you ignore the purpose, the flow stops.
The material details 3 distinct, interconnected purposes for God's blessing. Let's take the first one. To be a blessing to others.
This is the circulation principle. God blesses us so we can be a channel. If you just hoard resources for yourself, the source uses this really powerful, jarring metaphor.
What is it?
It calls it financial constipation.
Okay, that is a vivid image. What's the consequence of that blockage?
It leads to the person becoming a financial corpse. If you hoard and you refuse to let the blessing flow through you, you spiritually die in your own abundance.
Giving is living.
Giving is living. The covenant flow just cannot be satisfied if you shut your door while your neighbor is in need. Generosity is the lifeblood.
Okay, purpose number 2. For his kingdom's sake.
This is God's primary economic goal, according to the source. It's to spread his cities and build his kingdom. Therefore, the wealth of the world is literally programmed to be converted to the covenant-keeping saints to fund this massive global mandate.
And the Exodus is the historical example for this. Israel spoiled the Egyptians.
Right. They left with gold, silver, and brass. And that wealth wasn't meant for personal luxury items.
It's for the tabernacle.
Immediately and urgently, it was called for it to be used for the building of the tabernacle. God brought them out of bondage with great wealth, and then immediately demanded that wealth be consecrated to his sanctuary project. The priority is clear. Wealth acquisition is secondary to kingdom construction, and this leads to a very sharp warning.
Which is?
If this wealth is withheld from its true purpose, it becomes destructive. It becomes an idol.
The golden calf.
The golden calf. Ecclesiastes calls it a sore evil. Riches kept for the owners to their own hurt. The choice is binary. You either worship God with your gold by applying it to his purpose, or you worship your gold by hoarding it.
And the third purpose, to bless the poor.
This is presented as a guaranteed, high-return investment strategy. Proverbs says that he who has pity on the poor lendeth unto the Lord.
And since God has the eternal guarantee of the covenant.
And he says, owe no man anything. It means whatever you lend to him by giving to the poor will be repaid, with a bonus. It's an explicit privilege to engage in this kind of lending, and it secures a hedge of protection around your life.
We've laid out the mechanics. But, in the real world, prosperity isn't a one-time event. It requires endurance. So this final section introduces the spiritual and mental disciplines you need to sustain continuous triumph. The pillars of endurance.
Yeah, the first pillar is trusting. The source is really careful to differentiate between faith and trust.
Okay, what's the difference?
This is key to endurance. Faith is confidence in a specific promise. Trust is a total commitment to the nature of God, regardless of when that promise shows up.
So faith can waver?
Faith can waver, confidence can be cast away, but trust cannot fail. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved.
And what's the ultimate practical benefit of getting to that state of unwavering trust?
It's freedom from anxiety. Trust frees you from taking thought for essentials, worrying about food, drink, clothing, because your heart is fixed on the kingdom.
And there's a warning attached.
A big one. Cursed be the man that trusteth in man, which includes trusting in uncertain riches. God's true riches are held and delivered on trust. We trust him to provide, and he entrusts us to distribute.
And this trust is the antidote to that famine mentality we talked about earlier.
It is. The Psalms guarantee that the upright won't be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. This happens because their heart is fixed, immovable, trusting in the Lord. It converts economic obstacles into supernatural miracles.
Okay, the next pillar, waiting. The secret of patience. This one feels like it directly attacks our modern need for instant results.
It really does. The material asserts that Abraham needed patience to obtain the promise, even after God swore it to him.
And quick prosperity can be dangerous.
The source cautions it often leads to grievous austerity because the foundation isn't strong enough to hold it. God's lifting always happens in due seasons. You have to build the capacity before the manifestation arrives.
And the greatest danger during this waiting period is internal. It's murmuring.
Murmuring literally destroys the seeds you've already sown through your dedication and giving. Waiting is described as despising the negative circumstances and holding tightly to the word without staggering, just like Abraham did.
You have to wait for the external change before you change your internal commitment.
Or your impatience will void the whole thing.
Pillar C, talking. The trigger for manifestation. We're back to the power of our words.
Yes, and it's non-negotiable for sustained breakthrough. Confession is made unto salvation, or manifestation. You cannot possibly talk lack and stumble into plenty.
Prosperity only answers to those who talk it.
Because your words are the conclusion God sees for your expectation.
And the example of the Israelites at the border of the Promised Land is just catastrophic.
It's heartbreaking. They were told they were about to enter the land, but they focused on their weakness and their fear. They said, "We be not able."
And God's response,
"As ye have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you." Their negative talk barred an entire generation from accessing the promised wealth. We have to speak out of the abundance of the light we've received, constantly talking prosperity.
And the final pillar, de-thanking. the final step into unlimited prosperity.
This is the culmination of the endurance strategy. Giving glory to God is the ultimate, unshakable strategy.
Abraham was made strong in faith by.
By giving glory to God even before he saw the miraculous birth of Isaac.
So thankfulness isn't just, a polite spiritual act.
Not at all. It's a mechanism for multiplication and accelerated fruitfulness. Thankfulness is critical. Thanklessness, on the other hand, rapidly leads to murmuring and fruitlessness.
The source has a great metaphor for this.
It does. It says giving, working, thinking, trusting, and waiting. That's the seed planting. But thanking and talking, that's the watering of the seed. Thankfulness accelerates the filling of your cloud, ensuring the rain, the manifestation, comes in its due season.
Okay, so the final piece of this entire covenant puzzle is integrating all this spiritual power with practical human effort.
Yes, the covenant of labor, working and thinking.
The source is really clear on this. Working is the channel through which you actually take delivery of the blessing.
Exactly. While giving positions you by the rivers of water, it's the work of your hand that God blesses. Psalm 1 says, "The planted man shall prosper in whatsoever he doeth," not just what he gives.
There is a dignity in labor.
And a necessity. The idle man has no future in this covenant. If you don't work, you shouldn't eat. It's that plain.
But, and this is a huge, but the source makes a critical distinction. Work alone does not make you rich.
No. Wise work does.
What's the difference?
Mere labor is just exertion. Wise work is strategic application. The labor of the foolish wearies everyone because he knoweth not how to go to the city.
So wisdom involves what? Sitting down to think.
Generating creative ideas, operating with a sound mind. Let's expand on that sitting down to think idea. Because for a lot of us, work means moving, doing, executing. The source suggests that sitting down is a form of warfare.
The warfare of strategic coordination.
Yes. Before any major project, Jesus said you should first sit down and calculate the cost, analyze the ideas. This mental exercise is crucial for high-level productivity because the supernatural flow requires a supernatural strategy.
And Daniel's story is a perfect example of this.
It is. Daniel needed a secret, a revelation, to save everyone's life. He requested time, and he used that time in revelation-expectant prayer.
And the secret was revealed.
In the night vision. That was wise work. He wasn't relying on physical effort. He was using spiritual discipline to locate the secret, which then unlocked the solution and led to his promotion.
And finally, this whole creative strategic ability is tied directly back to our very first point.
To the foundation. Purity.
How does purity boost your cognitive capacity?
Sin corrupts your mentality. When Adam sinned, humanity lost its ability to think strategically like God. The source argues that impurity quenches the spirit of understanding.
Think of Samson.
His adulterous life didn't just cause physical blindness. It caused him to lose his mind, his strategic capacity. Solomon's mind was eroded by his wives.
Conversely.
When your mind isn't consumed by the guilt, the scheming, the cover-up that sin requires, all that mental energy is suddenly freed up for creative, productive thought. Purity quickens the mind. It releases the creative ability, the sound mind mentioned in 2 Timothy.
The purer you are, the brighter you are.
And the more strategic you are mentally, it all comes full circle.
Wow. This has been an incredibly rigorous deep dive, mapping out a system of prosperity that begins really with internal alignment before you even touch a practical monetary strategy. We've seen that this covenant is structured like a multi-stage building project. You have to secure the foundation with consecration and purity.
Then align the driving force through dedication, affection, and addiction.
And then engage the practical laws of the word, faith, and input.
And all of that has to be sustained by the endurance pillars of trusting, waiting, talking, and thanking while you're consistently applying wise labor. It's a whole system.
It really is.
And if you adhere to this comprehensive covenant, the blessing isn't just restricted to finances. The source is so clear that the covenant ensures total well-being.
Right. It includes health.
To fence God, building a hedge of fire around you and all you have,
Longevity.
and crucially, sorrow-free riches. It's a total state of secure, purposeful well-being.
The ultimate purpose of this deep dive, as the source makes explicit, is to effect changes in your life. But change is always a choice.
And having encountered these deep, non-negotiable truths of the covenant, you, the listener, you have to decide. You have to choose change, the discipline of this blueprint, or remain in the chains of frustration that come from relying on all those shifting external circumstances.
Your destiny is not in the hands of the current economic climate. It's wrapped up in your personal choice to stand strong in the covenant. So, what specific foundational choice will you make today that will define your tomorrow?
And here's a final thought for you to mull over, one that connects right back to the heart of the matter. If God's ultimate desire is to make you a distributor of blessing, what singular, focused act of dedication or kingdom service, one completely free from any self-interest or lust for gain, could you engage in today that would undeniably prove your heart's primary allegiance to the covenant? Think about the implications of that kind of radical surrender.